when you're working on something, you have a project, you tell yourself this is not possible, it will be possible. But just have an open mind, find out what it takes to succeed in that space, apply your tenacity, your energy and co. Chances are it will work.
Onyemaechi Elumelu, popularly known as Mr. Tony Elumelu, is one of Africa's leading investors and philanthropists. According to Forbes, he has a net worth of over $700 million and is currently ranked the 31st richest man in Africa. He's the chairman of Heirs Holding, a family-owned investment company. He's also the chairman of United Bank of Africa, a financial company that has operations in over 20 African countries. And also, he's the chairman of Nigeria's largest quoted conglomerate called Transcorp. Mr. Tony Elumelu's career achievement is what many young and even old Africans look up to. But one key question we forget to ask is, how can a man who comes from a middle-class family with little to no capital and connection amass a net worth of over $700 million in a continent and country where many young African entrepreneurs struggle and complain about corruption? Let's find out. Onyemaechi Elumelu was born in the city of Jos, Nigeria, to the family of Susan and Dominic Elumelu. Right from his childhood, Tony has always wanted to be a businessman because he had family members who were successful businessmen and women. He went on to attend Bendel State University, now known as Ambrose Ali University, where he earned a BSc in economics. In 1985, Tony Elumelu served as a Youth Corps member for the National Youth Service Corps and had the opportunity to work as a salesman for another popular bank in Nigeria called Union Bank. After Tony was done with his youth service, few years down the line, he went on to get a master's degree in Science of Economics from the University of Lagos. I know you might be thinking now that because Tony went on to pursue a master's degree, he might have been one of the brightest students in school. Guess what? That is not the case. Tony Elumelu graduated from the university with a second-class lower, which is actually a poor result for most job standards back then and even now. In fact, few years down the line, after Tony had gotten his master's degree, he saw a job opening at All State Trust Bank that required the applicants to have a second-class upper before applying. Tony, having huge belief in himself and not minding the poor results he graduated with, went on to apply for this job opening, going on to make a bold move in his cover letter by stating that he knew that he, Tony, did not meet the qualifying criteria for the advertised role, but he believed that he was self-driven, intelligent and ambitious enough to make the bank proud. Well, this confident move by young Tony Elumelu paid off as he got an entry-level role as an analyst at the bank, and Tony, true to his words, worked very hard and diligent that in a short period of time he was able to become the branch manager of the bank at just the young age of 27. As a branch manager of All State Trust Bank, Tony had the opportunity to study the Nigerian banking industry from the top. He and a few colleagues took note of the evolution happening in the Nigerian banking sector. They knew that some banks would eventually start falling off due to lack of innovation, so they set to grasp practice and skills that would enable them to take advantage of such opportunity when the time arose. In the year 1997, due to the various financial reforms by the Central Bank of Nigeria, there are many distressed banks in the country, and about 22 of them were to be liquidated. Tony Elumelu, having waited all his career for this particular moment, teamed up with a few of his banking colleagues to purchase a distressed bank called Crystal Bank, which they later went on to rename to Standard Trust Bank. I know one key question you might be asking now is, how can an ordinary bank branch manager who earned a fair amount of money have the capacity to pull resources together to purchase a bank worth multi-millions, if not billions of naira? Well, I asked myself that same question, and after doing research, I came to the understanding that the strategy, or let's say method, Tony and his colleagues used to make that particular bank purchase was through a strategy called debt equity swap. You see, back in 1997, a lot of cash depositors had lost money in the banks, and Tony and his colleagues knew that to successfully take over Crystal Bank, they had to make sure that most of these depositors who had lost money in the banks recovered their money over a period of time. So they made a smart move. They approached the shareholders of Crystal Bank, they approached the Central Bank of Nigeria, and also approached the NDIC, which stands for Nigerian Deposit Insurance, telling them that they wanted to assume the debts that Crystal Bank owed its depositors. When the CBN, NDIC and Crystal Bank shareholders accepted, they converted these debts that Crystal Bank owed its depositors to equity in the business, then proceeding to pay off these depositors over a period of time. After Crystal Bank was successfully purchased, they renamed it to Standard Trust Bank, and Mr. Tony Elumelu was appointed its pioneer CEO. Immediately Tony Elumelu was appointed the CEO of the bank, he sprung into action with his team. He came up with a 3-tier strategic intent that will help guide the bank to success and set a deadline for every one of them. The first strategic intent was to turn around a distressed bank and make it viable in the first 3 years of the business, a goal which they went on to accomplish. The second strategic intent was to make a distressed bank become one of the top 10 banks in Nigeria in 7 years' time, another goal which they went on to accomplish. Then finally, the third strategic intent was to make a distressed bank become one of the top 3 banks in Nigeria in 10 years' time, another goal which they went on to smash in a very unique way. When Tony took over the helms of Standard Trust Bank, yes, he was able to hit the first 2 intents in less than 7 years' time, but hitting the third one required a more creative and diverse strategy, and there are only 2 ways they could become one of the top 3 banks in Nigeria. 1, they could either focus on acquiring new customers and trying to expand, or 2, merge with an already existing bank with good presence and then capitalize on the influence they would have if they joined forces with another bank. Well, Tony decided to go with the second one because as a good businessman, he knew that 2 heads was better than 1.
And we will go back and work very, very hard to make it better.
In 2005, Tony made history when he led the biggest merger in sub-Saharan Africa at the time, combining Standard Trust Bank with United Bank for Africa, which at the time was Nigeria's 3rd largest financial service institution. This merger meant that they smashed their 3rd strategic intent of becoming one of the top 3 banks in Nigeria because they actually became number 1. After the successful merger of Standard Trust Bank and United Bank for Africa, Tony Elumelu again was appointed the CEO. And just like he did the last time when he was appointed the CEO of Standard Trust Bank, he sprung into action with his team. They came up with a 3-tier strategic intent they wanted to achieve while running United Bank for Africa. Tier 1 intent was to solidify their leadership in Nigeria. Tier 2 intent was to become a Pan-African bank, while Tier 3 intent was to have presence in key financial sectors of the world. Keeping true to their strategic intent, 2 years after the merger, they went on to solidify their presence in Nigeria, going further to open branches in cities like Cameroon and Ghana. Currently, UBA has presence in over 19 African countries, plus Nigeria 20. They are gradually hitting their 3rd strategic intent of having presence in key financial sectors of the world. They currently have presence in the United States of America, the UK, Paris, and just recently, United Arab Emirates. Tony Elumelu served as the CEO of United Bank for Africa between 2005 until 2010 and only had to step down because the then governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sanusi Lamido, mandated all individuals who have served as CEO in the banking sector for more than 10 years to step aside. Tony, having already served as CEO at Standard Trust Bank for 8 years, plus his 5 years reign as CEO at United Bank for Africa, had to then step down and begin a new phase.
I will have, from tomorrow, a new identity. I will have the identity of becoming the CEO, the Chairman of Heirs Holding.
On Saturday, the 31st of July 2010, during his UBA sent forth event, Mr. Tony Elumelu announced to the world that he will be pursuing his dreams of starting Heirs Holding, a family investment company whose aim would be investing in the critical sectors of the African economy. When Heirs Holding was started, the early days was very lean. They had a staff strength of about 10 employees, and majority of these 10 employees worked from a house owned by UBA until they were able to secure a property that was perfect for the company. In the year 2011, a year after Tony had started Heirs Holding, they were able to purchase majority shares in Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, popularly known as Transcorp, a company that had investments in the energy, power, hospitality and agricultural sector of Nigeria. This was actually their first deal, and ever since then, Tony, through Heirs Holding, have been able to invest in more than 25 businesses, and most recently, through a joint partnership with Transcorp, they are able to purchase 45% stake in OML17, a Nigerian oil license, a deal which cost them $1.1 billion. Tony Elumelu's journey to the top started with a leap of faith and confidence in himself by applying for a job position he did not meet or qualify for, and there's a lot you can learn from that little move he made in his early days. If you enjoyed watching this video, I have another video where I break down how Tosin Eniolarunda built Money Point into a $170 billion fintech processing company right here in Nigeria, and I believe you'll find that video interesting as well. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel guys, and with that being said, see you in my next video. Dewo.